Ha! Alright. I don't think that'll... It's one of these things. Yay! Technology. Technology. Stay. Stay. Excellent. Ugh. I don't know why I even bother. My hair's a mess. Stay. Let's see hair day. Hello everyone. I hate LA, love me anyway. Tuesday broadcast, I guess. So unfortunately AMD is giving me errors, so I have to do it through the cellular technology, which I was kind of hoping I didn't. But here we are anyway. Rough few days for me. I had to take off yesterday because of my PTSD from military sexual trauma. It was just emotionally draining. I had a meeting with one of those raters and I had to go over the entire incident where the United States Air Force sexually abused me at Lackland Air Force Base. I don't like reliving that moment. I don't like having flashbacks to relive that moment. I don't like having to tell someone about that just to receive my veteran benefits. It was soul crushing. I cried. I cried throughout the entire reliving of that experience of how the United States Air Force sexually abused me for reading a calculus book after they had already injured me and I told them to let me go home. I told them there was no need to hold me on base for what amounts to a physical injury that I could have seen a private care doctor for. But no. Instead of that, they kept me on base where I could be sexually abused by Master Sergeant Miranda of the United States Air Force at Lackland Air Force Base. I put a link in the description for change.org. So if anyone needs to clear their conscience for being an American or being just a citizen anywhere in the world, I joined the military because I believed in my country, and I still do. It's just, it's different. I thought by joining the military, I was joining a force for good, heroes that in a case of things like a national emergency or a state emergency, such as a wildfire, they call in the National Guard. Ordinary people, citizens, and they do what most people can't. They go to a situation with limited intel, with... Oh, hello, Logan. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh at your name. It's just... I seem to be rocking that, but then underneath, well, it's hardly a reveal. But hello. So I am talking about how I missed the last podcast, which I was supposed to do yesterday, but unfortunately I was unable to make it because I had a PTSD conversation in pension exam, and it was just so emotionally draining, and I couldn't do the podcast. But today we're doing the podcast, so I have to wake up. So what we talk about in in this chat. Thank you, Logan. Thank you for asking that. It's rough. I hurt so much, and I can't express in words what it means to love a country and to have the one avenue that I thought I was going to have toward becoming an astronaut just taken away from me in such a way that is incredibly brutal and barbaric by a government which should have respected someone who made a sacrifice. I sacrificed my family. I could have spent time with my family, but no, I said, there are things that are more important than family. There are things more important than faith. I thought the American government would see that and care enough to give me enough training to be an effective astronaut and an effective citizen to help my country, because my country is not doing the best. I live in America and pollution is high. Civil duress is high in America, and there's a level of stress that we don't talk about as a society. You know, we go about our days, and people ask, what's going on, or they say, it is really bad out there, but then they don't do anything about it. I started this podcast because Los Angeles was on fire, but it wasn't just one fire, it was 5 fires concurrently. I've read the statistics, 10,000 acres burned. I don't know, can any of you hear me? I'll probably do that for the mic. Yay. Maybe you can hear me a little bit better that way. But 10,000 acres of forests and animals and birds just poof into smoke. And everyone that I look out my window and I see outside, they just go about their day as if nothing happened, as if those trees had no value, if the animals that lived in the forest had no value, the birds that lived in the forest had no value, and that the people who lived along that entire area were less important than whatever they have going on in life. Nobody stopped. Nobody missed a beat. Forests were on fire, and not enough people cared. Not enough people cared because we don't have this idea in Los Angeles County that if there's an emergency like that, you should be a part of your fire department as a volunteer. Fire departments need firemen, but they also need volunteer firemen for when there are fires that are just out of control. A forest fire is definitely one of those. I didn't know you were in California. Hello, fellow Californian. I don't mean to disparage your entire state when I say that all of this... Oh, welcome back, Mon 131. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I hope I don't mean to disparage your state, our state, by saying we need to care more. Because when your county is on fire, when Los Angeles County was on fire, 5 fires going on at the same exact time, that's throwing a lot of smoke into the air. And the air is bad enough. Okay, we have particulates of solid matter in the air. Carbon monoxide in the air, you have sulfur dioxide in the air, you have nitrates in the air, you have other chemicals in the air, plastics in the air. And every time that you take a breath in a county like Los Angeles, you take that into yourself. But worse, you have all of the air from the smoke pushing it further down into your lungs. I have a link, change.org/clearlasmoke. It is there for anyone who is interested in some of the engineering solutions that I've come up with in order to reduce pollution here in the state of California, namely changing the roads. I have a hypothesis which has been proven in several other countries, including Africa, where I think they may have pioneered it, of taking recycled materials and using that as building materials. You could build playgrounds, you can build houses, and yes, you can build roads out of recycled materials. And in fact, when you do it that way, you also give yourself a leeway to redesign the roads for use. Do you have a lot of trucks on that road? Do you have a lot of, I say trucks, and I really should be saying lorries, but I'm in the wrong side of the pond in order to say things like that. So I have lived here too long. I've lived here too long if I'm saying that. But it's okay. I have to accept that I live in America and I'm an environmentalist, and it pains me that, yeah, we definitely, Logan, you're absolutely right. We need to start rebuilding. But when a fire or an emergency like that happens, they just say, well, just put it back up. A house burns down, put it back up. Roads are melted or tarnished in any sort of way. They do patchwork. They don't think, if the road has a pothole, if the road has cracks in it, if the road is any way damaged, replace the entire road. If you did that, you could increase the health for the cars that go on it, and a healthy car pollutes less. And these are the kind of things that I want to talk about. I want to be able to walk into city council and say, I have enough signatures to consider proposing this as a full law for the state of California, which is why I have change.org/clearlasmoke. We need to join together and be together as a community to help each other. Absolutely right, Logan. I have PTSD from military sexual trauma, so it is extremely difficult for me to have conversations with people. I'm a community, civic-minded person, but I've also have trauma that is so deep right now that it's too much for me to try and have that conversation face to face with people. But thanks to the power of technology, I can continue my environmental activism and try and reach people and hope that they can see reason. For those that are new to this conversation of what I do on this podcast, I talk about what we can do to make things better. Because if you live in California, you know what a firestorm is. You know that there are LA fires here. You know that there will be another LA fire soon. In fact, after the LA fires were beginning to slowly extinguish themselves, thanks to the help of both the Los Angeles Fire Department and the National Guard, which they had to call in because there just wasn't enough people. There was another fire that started in San Diego. And I have to say, what are we thinking? Okay, what are we thinking? Because I have been on X. You can follow me on X. My name is Daddy on X. IANXILYANA. That's me on X. And every day, every chance I get, I try and reach out to the current Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass about environmental issues. And I use I do music as as art therapy, because of my severe PTSD, I have some destructive tendencies of when I feel the PTSD symptoms, I will drink or I've avoided doing heavy drugs. I've had people try to force drugs upon me and say, well, this will help you cope, this will help you deal with it. It didn't suit me well. So instead of the destructive behaviors, I try and create music in order to further the conversation and turn that pain into something more constructive, as something that I could use as a bridge between what is essentially a very withdrawn military patriot and a community that needs heroes. Very good question, Logan. I enjoy making music. I I don't really consider myself a musician. I consider myself a climate scientist, an engineer, an explorer more than a musician. People usually make music in order to be famous or successful in life. I make music as a way to do a Sudoku puzzle. It's nothing more than a math exercise for me. It's calculus. With my music, I try and tap into some important issues, and sometimes it's just really, really slutty house music, which I love. I love my dirty electro. I do a lot of covers now, and I have to thank the music industry because no matter how hard it is and how alone I feel as the singular voice, at least in my ear, of people who are trying to solve the climate crisis that we have in Los Angeles County and across California. California is slowly becoming a desert, but it's not as slow as we think. It's becoming rather rapid. When you lose a forest due to a fire, it doesn't automatically turn into a wetland. It goes the other way because there are less trees there. And then the next fire happens, and the fire after that, and the fire after that. And then pretty soon, nothing will grow there, and it'll just be a desert. So I want to change it. I've come up with the petition change.org/clear LA smog. I've also started an initiative to irrigate Los Angeles because those areas were parched for water before the fires even touched them, which is why it blazed as it did. Those trees were thirsty and nobody listened. They see the green, they see the bark, and we don't have enough people trained in forestry sciences or just people who feel things. I come from a Native American background on both sides of the family, so I don't know, I guess it's just genetic in me. I guess it's the genes in me, or it's a genetic trait that when it comes to nature, I feel more deeply for it. It means something more to me. I recycle more often because I see that there is an ecosystem, there is a level of gratitude between myself and, I will call them, plant partners, because every day when I wake up, I have a plant to thank for providing me oxygen so that I can bring some air into my body. Without plants, without air, we cannot live. California is oxygen deprived. When you see incidents of things like road rage or fights breaking out in the middle of the street and tempers just flaring up all the time, it's because we don't have enough air here in California. And our politicians are not fighting for us like I fight for California every single day on X. I call this podcast I Hate LA, Love Me Anyway, because I am not the hero of this story. The hero of the story are the people of Los Angeles. I'm just a person trying to cheer you on as people who live in California or live anywhere globally to do your part in order to make sure that we have an earth that we can live in. I call myself daddy on X, and I refer to myself daddy in my music, not because I'm a pimp, but because I care. I care enough to try and raise this country the right way. Because we don't have enough role models out there who are trying to speak to people and tell them that there is a social contract. This is why people go to school. If you learn about philosophers like Rousseau, Locke, Hobbes, if you speak to these people, they talk about things called a social contract, where yes, we have gotten to our part in life where we no longer have kings and queens and, people bowing everywhere and, a caste system in most places. However, we ignore the fact that when we elect politicians, we recently had an inauguration here. Congratulations to President Donald J. Trump. I'm glad he's our president. I know that might be controversial to say, but I am glad. However, he is all the way in Washington. I live in California. When those fires happened, my president wasn't here in this town. My president wasn't there. Just like, I don't know, he might have taken a plane over, he might have done something. I would like to think that at some point he might have considered that. The previous president, because currently we have a new one. It's so confusing. And it's also irrelevant because in those situations, it was a California problem. And Californians are not rising up to meet the needs of the area. There are things like benefit concerts for the LA firefighters. I put a link in there actually because it's this Saturday. No, I wasn't. I wasn't on the billing this time. But there'll be another fire, and guess what? I might reconsider that. I mean, the fires are so frequent at this point. I might as well just say, if I miss one, I'll take the next series of LA fires to maybe do a benefit concert for. And I don't even know why we didn't even stop at a concert. I might as well just do daily salutations to the fire department because they're the only people standing between us and incineration. I don't understand why, but most people don't see it that way. They look at the fires going on outside. They look at the pollution. Some of them actually have children with asthma, and the asthma might be related to birth defects or, your mother uses way too much hairspray. And it might also be because you live in a state that doesn't value the forest, doesn't value parks and national reserves, and slowly encroaches upon what should be public land in order to give you businesses like nail salons, And I don't know, my cuticles are terrible. I would definitely go to a nail salon, but if I had a choice between a nail salon and a park, LA needs parks, LA needs trees. There's a lot of pollution here, and just like the fire department stands between you and fire to shield you, to protect you, to take you from danger back into safety. That's what trees do. That's what everything around us does. There's a whole ecosystem, and we as humans, we don't we don't look at it that way. We see it as, oh, nature, bugs, ew. Yeah, but it's the ants that help your soil. It's the pesky little ants that, if you have indoor plants, all they want to do is just build their home. They don't really want to talk to you. They don't really want to bother you. They just want to build a home, and by doing so, help your plants grow. However, it does take into account that you'd have to consider ants worthy of your attention. I don't know, I'm super, super sensitive to life. Life is all around us. And I don't understand why people can't hear it or take a moment to acknowledge that there are things that are important in life. And being able to speak on issues like environmentalism is important, because you have to start very, very young. I started doing community outreach, doing soup kitchens, food pantries, and it opened my mind to what poverty looks like, what human suffering looks like, and that it takes very little to be a decent person. But when you're a decent person, the weight, the stress, it rolls off of you to do a nice thing for someone else for no other reason than they needed to get it done. There are homeless people who need homes, and it's very, very nice to be able to have organizations that help them. When your forest is burned down by those greedy Californian capitalist pigs and the policies that politicians put into place here, where do you go? Where is your Airbnb shelter when you're a squirrel or a rabbit or even a bear? Those forests were alive. Those forests were a community, a city to itself. Speaking of which, my other petition, change.org/genius to Mars. If Los Angeles County and California insist upon destroying everything around them in their path to make more movies that less people see, or television that no one has time to watch and enjoy as a family because we have enslaved Americans to chase money instead of trying to build rapport with your own kin. Oh, and I know that they do this globally. I live in America and I see the results. I see what happens when you have families that can't connect, and they don't learn about things like charity, or they don't learn about things like community outreach and being civic minded. That sometimes you have to take time out of your weekend to not go to the cinema and just sweep your town street, or sweep your front porch, or clean your own room, or organize your recyclables, because there are landfills filled with things that are recyclable and things that are biodegradable, can be used. You could compost with all of the food waste. If I do one thing while I'm here in LA, is I'm gonna start talking to people as much as possible about the joys of composting and taking your food scraps and using those to grow your own food. I do it all the time. I actually love growing vegetables and things like that by myself. I love being a farmer. I would love to be a farmer on Mars. I would love to go to Mars by myself and prove what I know to be true, that humans can adapt to anything. They do it all the time. You think something like a firestorm would break people down and wake them up. It didn't. They just shifted around it. We can shift around having less oxygen on Mars. We can shift around it being extremely cold on Mars. We can shift around it being irradiated to a higher level than Earth because there is no atmosphere. We could deal with the drop in gravity, or we can do anything if someone goes to Mars and says, I'll go and I'll prove to you that it can be done. Not only will I prove to you that it can be done, I'll show that it can be done well, and that you could do it too if you came to Mars. That's what I want. I was asked by Logan if I am a musician and, do I like doing music? And it's like, no, I actually prefer being an engineer. I prefer challenges. Music is not a challenge to me. Do I celebrate every song? Of course I do. I mean, it's solving a calculus puzzle to me. I don't really see them as problems. I mean, I guess that's a misnomer that most mathematicians should stop doing in classes. They should stop calling it solve this math problem. It's solve this math puzzle, because puzzles are challenges. Problems are things that you have to overcome. I've never seen a person shirk from solving a puzzle. You solve a puzzle, you get bragging rights. You solve a problem, well, you had a problem. You solved it. I grew up in America studying science, studying math, and I want to be an astronaut. I don't want to be a musician. In fact, I'm hoping that I can take a break from being a musician after my next slew of songs come out. I have done far too many covers, and I enjoy them, every last one of them. But I want to take a break in order to focus solely on some of my physics experiments, namely the commute and the gravity well. If you follow me on X, I'm Ian X Ileana on X. I'm Daddy. You can follow me there, and you can actually go through my timeline where I start talking about the physics of the commute and the gravity well. Because these are things that we should be talking about. We should be talking about that at NASA. We should be talking about that at SpaceX, because these people would rather use rockets. And every time they come up with a new version of a rocket, I just say, you just don't get it. You don't. You're behind. You're behind the schedule that you're supposed to have. I love groups like Planetary Society and SETI, and it's just like there are aliens out there. There are aliens out there. Why don't we go find them? Because if we use rockets, how far do you think you get? I mean, you can go to the moon, you can go to the Mars, sure, but I mean, not in any fast capacity, and you're certainly not going to go to another star that way. I'm trying to expand human technology by using some advanced technology. Something like the commute and the gravity well would be a higher level of physics and engineering that most people would consider, because it would mean that you wouldn't have to use locomotion as we know it. You wouldn't have to use combustion or inertia. It would just be a conveyance. And that is how we need to think about things as people who want to live on other planets. Because this planet right here is very hostile. Earth is very hostile to humans right now. I would prefer that it weren't, so say it ain't so. But we're here in this situation, we got to make the best of it. So I'm here to talk to people, and I have to try. Even if it's through a podcast, I have to try and reach out to people and tell them that there is more to life. There is a better life, a life of challenge, but also safety and security. When you go to Mars that you will have fresh air, when you go to Mars that the food that you have will be free from, number one, radiation, and two, of all the chemicals that we have to use in order to compete with the other species, namely fungi. Oh my God. I have lived here too long. I mean, I'm losing all my faculties. Also, I'm super exhausted. I have nightmares, so from the PTSD from military sexual trauma, I don't sleep that often. And instead of sleeping, I create music in order to chase away the dreams of being tortured by the American government, which continues to this day. I left the military, and ever since, it's just been a slew of confrontations and forced just abuse by the American people. And even though it is extremely rude of them to do so, I take it as they still need guidance, because they're certainly not getting their home. I'm not a very upbeat person, as you can probably tell. I used to be a joyful person, and then I joined the military, and life kind of just... But I'm hoping that I can change that if people could start signing my petitions so that I could clean up the environment here in California. If enough people sign my petitions, I'll go far beyond just changing your roads. I'll clear that atmosphere myself. And I'll clear that I'm so exhausted. I will clear that atmosphere myself by reintroducing transpiration, which is rain. I need rain to happen in Los Angeles. if it started raining on a regular, if it rained on the regular here, you would have a beautiful, wet, green California, and you'd have a reason to smile because there'd be so much clean air, so much beautiful clean air. That's what I want for people here. I want them to know what it's like to have health back in your life. You come to a state like California because you like the weather, you like the beaches, you like the idea that you can maybe make something of yourself, maybe meet people who vibe the way that you do. But the air is filthy here. It's stealing your health. It's stealing your life away. And the longer you stay here, you think that you're just more beautiful, more in tune. You've got that LA glow. That LA glow is your skin, your hair, your body gasping for air, gasping for water, because the air is so dry here, and it's dirty, and it's killing us, all of us. And every day that we allow Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass to ignore the needs of the forests around them by not irrigating and not sending out forestry specialists or training them up, putting our lives at risk, we are actually making it worse. So here I am on YouTube. Thank you, YouTube, for allowing me to have this conversation with as many people as possible every day. Every day I will be on here until I move, or at least make any stride toward going to Mars, because, as I said, I'm an astronaut, I am an engineer, I am not the hero of this story. The hero of this story will always be the people of Los Angeles, once they stand up for themselves and demand from these politicians who they have elected to represent them to do something about climate change, to do something about the air quality, to do something about rain returning to California. We need to have rain here. We need to have a politician in office that gets that sunshine is lovely, but too much sunshine is bad for you. It's bad for the humans. It's bad for the environment. Since I do live in California, I will always pay homage to shows like Silo and Fallout, which talk about California without talking about California, or because they really are talking about modern society in general, how these cities that we built for safety and security, because we're always of the mindset that if we got a bunch of us together, none of us would be running around naked, just willy-nilly, fucking and stabbing each other. But when you have so many people together, you don't have a community. You have a bunch of people who do everything to ignore the community. Driving a car is an FU to your community. You might see it as, well, that's the only way I have to get around. And it's like, no, you don't. you should walk. I have injuries from my military service which make it difficult for me to do so. I still make an effort when I can. I refuse to drive here. I refuse to use anything but public transportation because I believe that you have a civic responsibility to your community to do what you can to help the environment. One less car clogging up those highways, the motorways, those roads is a lungful of air. One more inhale that you can do. We have to have this conversation. As difficult as it is to, and I know I keep looking away because I don't really like to look at myself right now because I'm not at my best. I have anorexia. I avoid eating because of all the stress and the flashbacks and the PTSD triggers that keep occurring to me, and the high stress state that I have living in California and Los Angeles, a city that is so talented and so vainglorious. But doesn't do enough. I mean, yeah, you have Hollywood pretty much on a silver platter saying this is an environmental issue wrapped in a bow of sex, glitz, and young Hollywood, and no one listens because it's comfortable to return back to your house. You lock your door because you think that was what makes you secure, and you stuff your face with food instead of saying, these walls are not big enough for me, they're not good enough for me. When you live in a state that pollutes as much as California does, these four walls are meaningless. Where else do you get your air from? Because if you have air go into your body, it has to go all the way from the nearest tree, which might be in a park somewhere, through all of the exhaust that these cars have, all of it. And then you have to go through downtown LA, which is nothing but homeless people setting their tents on fire. I used to live in Skid Row, so I can tell you, I've actually called the fire department about it and they just hung up on me. They don't see that as an issue. That you have small, not exactly controlled fires within the downtown area. And I enjoy going downtown. It's very convenient. But the air is bad there. The air is bad here in California throughout most of it, unless you are out of these cities. And I've asked LACTA if they could just give me a HUD-VASH voucher so I can go to another state. And I don't know, I've tried cities far too often. I need a village. I certainly need a village. A quiet little village where I can well, I want to say convalesce just a little bit, but I think I'm a bit beyond that if I'm going to Mars. I'm adamant about going to Mars. I don't see any other future for me. I know that Los Angeles County and the United States Air Force and Navy and whoever else is involved in Project Make Me a Superstar are counting on, my talent to come through, that my amazing singing ability and turntablism would eventually sway the American public to maybe love me and fund my celebrity status, but that's not going to happen. There's far too many artists. There's Beyonce and Lady Gaga, and I am never going to beat them in the Billboard charts. I'm not even going to try. It's not a contest. They sit there and that's their throne. Congratulations, your music's that good. It's excellent. It's otherworldly. It's superhuman. I'm just a climate scientist and an engineer, and that's who I am inside. That's why I wear the S on my chest. Just in case I ever need to be reminded of what it means to live here, to be a nerd who understands that beyond the fandom of geek culture, there is truth. There is truth to the idea that an alien comes to Earth and is a champion of the people. My father was certainly an alien. Out of this world to my mother, so foreign. Wow. So assertive and strong and different from all the people that my mother had ever met before. So she married him, bore him children. Strong DNA. And out of that came this community hero. But I'm not the hero. The hero is actually LA. If LA would actually do something about these firestorms besides just trend them on X. I suppose that's a bit too much to ask. Too much to ask that people put down their cell phones and stop talking about the forest fires and actually go see the forests. If California keeps burning down these forests, we won't have that luxury of being able to see trees in California at all. But that's just my opinion. I'm a person who wants to save lives and transform it for the best. I disagree that people in California should be subjected to what amounts to income-based chemical warfare by the government. That's what pollution is. It's more than just a danger to the climate, it's a weapon. It's a weapon against poor people who can't afford a mansion, can't afford to live outside these clouds of smoke and smog which poison our children. California isn't doing enough. They recently started talking about air quality in the newspapers and in their articles. Where was that conversation before? It's not as sexy as this starlet goes to rehab, or this starlet is hooking up with this other star. But it's important. Last I checked, all of us breathe oxygen. Some of us in less amounts, but at the core, I think we still do. So this is a podcast designed to talk to people and tell them that if you feel that it is important to you to help the environment, to help your city, your state. I talk about California, but this could be any town, any city. When I think of pollution, I think of London, actually. For sure I do. Because they had the Industrial Revolution and the factories and things like that. They know how bad that air was. They know. But they still haven't done enough. But they're doing more. They're starting to do speed controlled zones, and certain cars are not allowed on certain roads. When you do anything for the environment, you see the benefit. You see the benefit in your country's public health, which has to matter. Pollution is chemical warfare against us. I feel that way as an American citizen, that when your politician ignores your views on environmental issues, they are also continuing to use a chemical weapon against you, which is smog. Ruins your health. Smog ruins your health. I have a bunch of new music coming out. I don't normally promote my stuff, but that was the promotion. There's new music out. I don't care about music. I care about environmental issues. I care about the health of the people in this community. There is a link to benefit concerts. I invite people in the area who are observing this podcast to go to it. It's on Saturday. There's some lovely artists who are there. I am an awkward person. I'm not going to be Mr. Personality anytime soon. I'm anorexic because of my PTSD from military sexual trauma. I don't have the energy to smile. One of my favorite artists who allowed me to do a cover of his music, I look at his Facebook page and he is the happiest person I have ever encountered. I watch his videos and saying, I don't know why you even continue with music. Bottle whatever it is that allows you to feel that good and start selling it on Amazon. Because that is a luxury I don't have. I don't have that luxury of being happy while so much suffering is going on in this world, and it feels like I'm not the one to save them, but if not me, then who? Who is responsible? Because I know that when we talk about the LA fires, we're not talking about, an act of God or some sort of like nature freak accident or something like that. It's arson. It is human arson of these forests, because we are responsible for the changes in temperature which dried out the riverbeds, which dried those plants so that if a fire did happen, they weren't able to break it on their own. They actually had to have humans come and try and put the fire out for them after the humans caused the fire. When it comes to climate justice and crimes against humanity, which is what pollution is, it's a crime against humanity. It's a war crime. I don't know how in countries like the United States that we think we're free, when the very air that you bring into your body is poisoned by our government. Because they refuse to pass laws that would just benefit motorists without discriminating against either party of the solar crowd or diesel. If you're on Team Diesel, I say it in every single podcast, I'm not against you. I'm not going to fight Team Diesel. Any of these other environmentalists, they could do that. They can fight Team Diesel. I'm not. I'm on Team Reasonable. Team Reasonable would say, if I can't convince you to go to Tesla or some other car company to buy an electric, let me change your road so that it doesn't matter which car you chose, any pollution would be reduced to zero, because the road itself would take the pollution and then store it safely in order to be recombined or sent somewhere more useful. That's how I think. I think of solutions that cause less friction and less back and forth. Because as much as I want to have a conversation, a dialogue between myself and other people, sometimes those dialogues just turn into what I really don't want to do, which is a filibuster. Just endlessly prattling on about an issue instead of actually saying, you know what, you have a point, so let's concede this much so that all of us can benefit. I don't want to get into politics, but when you look at pollution and the truth of it, that a lack of civic action is causing chemical warfare against the poor, mostly people of colour, it behooves your attention. It behooves a veteran to say, I don't care that my veteran benefits led me to California, where there are stars and beautiful people everywhere. The air is fucking disgusting, and it's robbing my life. It's robbing your life. It's shortening it. It's shortening the quality of your life because you can't breathe. You can't bring in enough oxygen. So you're not who you're supposed to be. You're not acting the way that you're supposed to be because you don't have enough air. If you have fresh air, you'll know the difference. So change.org/ I didn't put it in the link, but I have to talk about this next on my podcast. I hate LA, love me anyway. Change.org/ clean air disco. More than just what is affecting the United States, I have to say thank you to Canada for helping us out in such a difficult, difficult. It's hard for me when you don't eat because the military sexually abused you for reading a calculus textbook. It's really hard to think clearly because I'm here on a podcast. I'm supposed to be live with people, but I'm currently having a flashback. So it's difficult for me to think and try to have a conversation through that. But let's try anyway. Change.org/clean air disco. Thank you to Canada for providing aid during the LA firestorm and continuing to do so for the next one, which will happen, and I'm not sure when, but it'll happen again and again and again and again. And I have to say, thank you, Canada, but when will we admit as a country that we can prevent forest fires? I grew up with a super hunky bear telling me that only you can prevent forest fires. And I don't know, his muscles were huge because I actually believe him that I can prevent forest fires. And I encourage other people to think that way too, that these LA firestorms are things that we can actually do something about. We can, and that's another thing that I'm really upset about. All this PTSD from the military sexual trauma is causing me to transition my gender without me going to a doctor, without my permission. The American government has done this to me against my will. And I know that this has been a conversation in the American justice system of a woman's right to choose, and the government doesn't have a right to dictate what's going on with my body. I say, well, you know, that is a lovely thing to say, and I support what you were trying to say with that sentence. But I will also say that I didn't ask to be a transgender person or a non-gender conforming person. I didn't ask that of my government. The United States Air Force forced that upon me by sexually abusing me at Lackland Air Force Base. So my voice will change along with the rest of me, because the United States Air Force would rather sexually abuse me than let me read my fucking calculus textbook in fucking peace. Or at least let me do it in a fucking library instead of being punished for telling a homophobe, don't call me a fag, or make derogatory comments toward me in the barracks. Through all this hurt and pain I have about my military sexual trauma, it is a quality of life issue to live in America. The country that wags its finger at every other fucking country, telling it what to do, telling it about human rights violations. Look at your own fucking country. America commits war crimes daily against its own people. That pollution is a war crime. It's chemical warfare. Sexually abusing your own military servicemen and women, forcing them to undergo rape, sexual harassment, sexual abuse, torture. That is the country that I live in. Do I think the military are upstanding citizens in everything they do? No, I'm not naive. I just thought that perhaps the Air Force, which assisted going to the moon, would have a little bit more respect for people of color who choose a STEM major in life, to go into things like engineering instead of saying, well, I'll just be a rapper or I'll just be some sort of sports star because that's the only thing I'm good at. People look at me, they won't hire me. So the only thing I'm good at is reductive positions like that. And no offense to the people who do them, but that's not reflective of the entire community, and you know that. There are plenty of people of color who are scientists, doctors, lawyers. I thought that the military was enlightened enough to see that a person of color who cares about their country, who wants to share their intellect and their heart in defense of America would respect that my body is my body, and I wouldn't be forced into sexual abuse under military orders. So I can't forgive. I can't forgive the United States Air Force for that. I can't forgive the American people for knowing that that happens to many of us. Many of us who just want to be a hero and say, back to you, go on, sit on your fucking couch, eat your Doritos, eat your Tostitos, drink a beer, drink a whole case of beer by yourself. Enjoy that freedom. Let me go and defend it for you. And instead of receiving any sort of honor or dignity, I get, thank you for your service, instead of, wow, instead of me going to war or joining the military, you did, and you were sexually abused by the American government under military orders by the United States Air Force. More than thank you for your service, thank you for being a hero that doesn't quit, that doesn't stop, just because of a very, very shitty fucking cunt who was on a fucking power trip because she was the only one on CQ duty that day. I'm not going to live my life filled with hate. I find that to be a useless emotion. I find it to be beneath me to hate. I say I hate LA, love me anyway, because I will hate you until you wake up and change how you behave in this county. A fire truck just went by here, and I hear the sirens right now. Firefighters went and fought those fires. You didn't, I didn't. Why should they continue to have to fight forest fires? They're not trained for that. They're trained for house fires. They're trained for, get that kitty down from the tree. They're trained for that. They're not trained for, goddamn, 10,000 acres of burning and I am one person holding an itty bitty hose right now. They're not trained for that. And it's wrong. It is wrong for the county of Los Angeles to look at firefighters the Los Angeles Fire Department and say, go take care of that for me, instead of, please take care of that for me. And while you're taking care of that, why don't we as a county collectively talk to our elected officials about simple environmental practices that we can do locally that can prevent forest fires, so we don't endanger people who just want to be brave, courageous, and honorable for you. I feel very strongly about this issue, that the sanctity of life has to come into account when people take government jobs. I signed on to the military to be an astronaut. I didn't sign on to be sexually abused by Master Sergeant Miranda by the military orders of the United States Air Force at Lackland Air Force Base. But here I am, afterwards, a shell of a person. Can't bring myself to eat. Can't bring myself to sleep, change my clothes, do laundry. It's beyond me to do those things now. But I won't stop. I won't give up on a future where children, dogs, and people of all ages breathe fresh air. And I say children first and dogs second, because I don't think we understand what pollution and smog means. Because when we think of pollution and smog, we think of us, mostly adults, with our human-sized lungs. Years to grow resilience to an environmental stress. We don't think that these slightly annoying, tiny, diminutive humans, children, are sometimes half or a third of the size of a regular human, with even smaller lungs. Lungs that are just learning how to function. And instead of giving it the best start possible, we are handicapping our children by allowing pollution to run rampant as it does in this state. I want my politician to say that. I want my newscaster to say that. I want them to explain it in a way that American people can understand, that a viewer at home can say, well, I have a child, or I have a dog. And that's my next point. During this firestorm, I don't think there are enough articles of pet safety or people with service animals explaining what safety procedures you need to follow when it comes to this level of an environmental hazard. Dogs, cats, we talk about their wonderful sense of smell, their wonderful ability to show compassion and love and loyalty. But then the humans that are supposed to be there for them, that feed and water them and love them, are so lazy, so heartless, that when it comes to standing up for their animals, their close best friends in this world, telling those politicians, we need to do something about the smog, we need to do something about pollution. We need to do something about our motorways, which are nothing more than traffic stops because there's far too many cars. There's silence. Except for the sirens of the fire trucks that have to go all around the county for these fires that keep breaking out. I refuse to be silent on that issue or the issue of military sexual trauma, which is domestic terrorism, which is a war crime. Human rights are being violated in America by the military, often with the knowledge of leadership. It's continuing to happen, and the military is not doing anything about it. And I love the mindset of, well, you should be on your guard at all times. You should be ready for anything at any time. That's true. But could you also not rape or sexually abuse people who just want to be a hero for their own family, their community? Could you tell the military leadership that we need to have consistent reporting of every single sexual misconduct incident that the military is responsible for, so that there is a record and that we can do something about it instead of having the victims go through their lives without justice? The Air Force owes me an apology. It owes me an apology, and it owes an apology to every victim of military sexual trauma. And I know that that's not the only branch that does that. And it's not every serviceman in that branch that does that. But it's happened often enough and continues to happen. It is 2025. I think there is room for one more American resolution for this year. Why don't we, as a society, end military sexual trauma, end this cycle of abuse that the American government just shoves on citizens? Some of them, like myself, struggle to stay alive, but do under terrible stress. Either way, I'm too optimistic for a country that looks at a forest fire as just a headline instead of, wow, I could do more as an individual, I could do more as a citizen. Ian, Ileana, 1. Faith in humanity, 0. I'm going to consider that the cessation of this current podcast, but I will talk to you tomorrow. This has been Ian, Ileana, of I hate LA, love me anyway.